Okay, so the question is, first of all, what is faith? Why do we need it? And why is it so important? Faith is something which is almost comes at the end on the spiritual path. The reason is, again, the spiritual path that is taken by the Gnan Marg, not the Bhakti Marg. Bhakti Marg, the faith is right away there, right? You go to the temple, they say, okay, this is your God. You have to have faith in it and then keep, worshiping him. That's it. It may not work for everyone. Somebody who has a delicate mind, somebody who likes to lean on something or someone, for them, that works out well. But there are people, and nowadays with the science, the minds are transforming and they're becoming more scientific. People have to ask the questions. You take the kid to the temple, they say, okay, this is your God. He says, why? Why do I have to believe in this statue? So that is the main problem. And because of that, nowadays, the problem is happening is about the faith does not arise that easily. So one, we don't have a Bhakti Marg available for many of the new generations, including us even, because we really grew up in science. There was a time, many decades ago or several hundred years ago, people were innocent. Science was not developed. So they could accept the God being in the statue. Nowadays, we don't. And because of the development of the science, the argumentative mind takes you on the path of the Gnan Marg. So Gita is all about Gnan Marg. So the faith, when does it come and why is it so important? Because if you really think about it, faith, we all have to have it, whether we live our daily life or we go on a spiritual path. Faith is extremely important. Faith is really unexplainable. Faith is something that you consider something or someone higher than you, and you put your full trust in it or him, whatever. And then expect that things will go well. So if you really think about it, in Sansar, we use faith every day. I want to go see a doctor. What am I going to do? I'm going to ask my neighbor or friends. So who is a good doctor? Oh, he's a good doctor. So now you're making an appointment to go see the doctor, but again, with the faith that he will be a good doctor. And a lot of times it turns out to be true, but a lot of times it doesn't. And even though your friend or neighbor liked that doctor, maybe you didn't like him, then you have so many arguments against them. Then you feel that you got betrayed. Oh, you told me that this doctor is good, but I didn't like him at all. Same thing, the faith is something that takes us from one day to the next. You're stressed out. At the end of the day, you want to relax. You put a faith in Heineken. Well, one Heineken, it relaxes you. So you have faith in Heineken for that purpose. So faith is a very shallow thing. It can be, if you really think about it, you cross the road and you really putting a faith in the government to have a good traffic system. So, and hopefully everybody will be following. And most of the times it works out. So you keep having that faith, you cross the road. Once in a while, it doesn't work out. And then you end up in an accident. Then you keep blaming the government and whatever, or whoever did the accident or whatever. But faith is timed. Every day we need utilize the faith all the time. Because what is the reason behind it? Why do we need faith though? That's the main question that we're going to go into the detail to understand. Because mind can only see the present moment. That's all it has. And only the things which are known to it, it will follow. So what is in front of it, it can see. This is what it is. But future, it has no control on. Nobody has control on the future, but we worry. So what can mind do? If we really want to have a good future, something good to happen in the future, what I'm going to do as a human mind has intelligence. So it comes up with all kind of solutions, all kind of thoughts, all kind of plans, we make out, we take the insurances, all those things, we do it to protect the future. And which is fine, which is acceptable, but not every time it works. But in between, what happens is mind keeps on thinking, keeps making the plans. Even though you haven't had an interview for a job yet, your mind is thinking, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What I'm going to say? What if that guy says something? What I'm going to say in the return? This and that. You haven't taken the exam yet. You're going to still say, what is going to come in the exam? So you are literally living in the future, even though the future is not in your hand. So at some point, you have to trust that, okay, somebody comes and give you a hint that, okay, this paper is going to come out tomorrow. Then he says, okay, I'll see, I'm going to grab it and I'm going to prepare it. It may not happen, but faith is a futile attempt of the mind to solve the problems. Why? Because nobody wants the suffering, to avoid the suffering. What if something bad happens to me? What if this? What if that? To protect it, we try to envision the future. Meanwhile, we go through a lot of stress. And ultimately, we end up putting faith on someone. When you sign a paper for a surgeon, when he says, okay, sign here so I can operate on you, you're signing it with every bit of faith you have in him. And things may still go wrong. So faith that we use on a day-to-day basis is a Sansaric faith, which is necessary because otherwise you go crazy. We are going crazy anyway, but we don't realize that faith at the Sansaric level is obtained by asking your friends, relying on some objects, people, situations. But all of these are partial. Sansar is made out of partialities. It's dualities. It's not complete. There is good and bad. There is Ram and Ravan. There is day and night. All those things are variables. And with these variables, the uncertainty of the future becomes so big that even if you put trust on someone, not everything goes according to the plan. So the future that we are really looking for is avoidance of this suffering. And things have to happen very well in our life. So everybody ultimately looking at a comfortable material life. So when we use the Sansaric help, which may be people, objects, situations, the goal is also Sansaric. So this is a Sansaric faith. And of course, there's always going to be failures, disappointments, frustrations, and a lot of times good. But either way, the faith is there is no guarantee. So the question is, what is the difference between that faith and the faith of the spiritual faith? So spiritual faith comes in when you have tried, you have digested the sansar very well. If you're smart, you would have observed all these phenomena that Sansaric faith is not always complete, and not always good things happen to me. A lot of times bad things happen also, which probably were going to happen anyway. But who creates the future? The consciousness. The key of the future is in the control of the consciousness. So when the consciousness holds it, only one thing is going to happen. Either you're going to pass or going to fail is not the issue. You are going to fail or you are going to pass, but you don't know that. That uncertainty creates the anxiety. And then we end up putting trust on something or someone that is coming from the sansar itself. It's like one blind leading another blind. So blind relying on the blind to cross the road, you can imagine what's going to happen. So that's where the problem is. And Sansaric faith is only limited in the sansar. You know, a phone call, you pick up the phone and you want to talk to someone, you can do it right away in the sansar. What if you want to talk to your dad who has died? What are you going to do? It's useless. Sansaric, gadgets, sansaric approaches are helpful only within the sansar. Okay, you want sansaric benefits. Okay, I want $1 million. Can you spend in the woods? No, nobody cares about your $1 million. $1 million are useful only in the sansar. So we are living in this shell where we talk to each other, we consult each other, we try to gain something in this sansar, and we want to run away from losing something in this sansar. Literally, we are born in a prison, and everybody has their own cell. We decorate each cell, we visit each other on occasions, and then we find solutions within this prison cell. But we never know what is beyond. What is beyond the mind? Mind has a very fixed, very narrow window in which mind can look into that. And that's it. It can never go beyond the present. The past is in the memory. He cannot recreate the past. All he can do is think about it. And the same thing with the future is not in its hand. So it also keeps thinking about it. So meanwhile, suffering stays all the time. And faith does not really help. A lot of times it fails, but we don't have a choice. So number one reason why we need faith is to circumvent the future, how to handle the future that is coming onto us. And for that, we put faith. We don't have any other choice. So this is how a sansaric person lives. But spiritual person is a different story altogether. So because what he has done is, he has understood the essence of life. That this is, in sansar, everything is unpredictable. There is no way to deal with this unpredictability 100%. There is no way. So what else is there? What is beyond the sansar? So that's when he gets into finding some solution. So he consults some spiritual guru. Again, faith comes in. He puts faith in that guru, hoping that he knows something and he will take you somewhere. Again, you put faith in him. And maybe he turns out to be a fake guy and he does not lead you in the right direction. Again, you fail. But somebody says that, like Buddha and Mahavir comes and he says, don't listen to me. Go within. These are the gurus who had championed the inner path. And you decide that, okay, I'm going to listen to him and I'm going to take the inner path. Because inner path has to be taken by you only. Nobody else can do it. So this inner path starts, but who starts that path? Okay, you take his advice from the spiritual gurus or leaders or whatever, and they say, okay, but who is listening? Your ego. You, as you are listening to this sermon, you're trying to digest it. Meanwhile, as you have understood this sansar, you have grasped the futility of sansar. That even if after putting faith, even after having 10,000 imaginations about the future, whatever was going to happen, happens anyway. A lot of times, no matter how much I think, but bad things happen. I took all the precautions to prevent them from happening, but it happened anyway. And at the same time, even if you had not thought about anything, all of a sudden windfall comes and everything good happens. And you didn't even do anything about it. So not necessarily good or bad are in your hands, but we don't know that because our mind keeps on thinking. So meanwhile, the stress and suffering becomes part of your life. But as you start going deep within, the same ego, which was applying its energy to the outside world, looking for solutions, leaning on somebody else's shoulders, taking hint from this, taking hint from that, now has realized that unless I do something about it myself, nothing is going to happen. So what he does is he turns the ego itself. Ego is the one that's going to start the meditation. Ego is going to look for something. Ego says that, okay, I heard that something that is beyond this sansar, something that is within, There is mind and there is something beyond the mind. I have heard about it. So the initial approach is still going to be taken by your ego. And without that ego, you cannot succeed. Ego is the initiator. It's the seed, which is ultimately going to go within and turn into a spiritual tree. So ego goes inside. And again, the same frustrations keeps, because the sansar, which has created all these impressions on you. Normally, any kind of difficulty, you go and ask someone. Here inside, there is no one to ask, no one to lean on. It's just you and your thoughts and all your life experiences. The most important thing is your life experiences. If you just do meditation mechanically versus if you bring all your life experiences, which has happened and which are happening already in front of you, how those things are panning out, where going inside, whatever little glimpse you're getting to walk away from the mind, walk away from the sansar, is helping you. How much peace is coming in? If I use this approach, next time the similar situation arises, what are the results? Things like that. All this is in a comprehensive way you do in a deep reflective meditation, and the lessons starts coming up, and ego starts realizing its own mistakes, that, okay, I should not have said that. I should not have done that. After all, what's the point? What is this? What is that? Why did I do this? Okay, no problem. I'm going to go on. And you keep on being aware of your own ego. Ego has a lot of faults, no question about it. But ego is also a gift from the consciousness. Your self-identification is extremely important to save yourself from getting destroyed, from getting annihilated. I mean, if a dog attacks you, you want to protect yourself, or a lion attacks you, or cheetah attacks you, you want to protect. So asmita, I amness, is a gift of the consciousness, so that you can flourish in the sansar, but up to a certain point. Every seed also has a nice covering on it to protect it for sometimes thousands of years, until the favorable situations arise and a seedling starts coming out. The same way, the ego is that seed cover. It has the shell that is holding on to your potential to reach to the higher level. And when it drops in a fertile soil, then only it starts sprouting. And what is the fertile soil? Fertile soil is the peace. Peace is that fertile soil where there is a room to go in a different direction. In sansar, we are caught up in the same cycles. You tell me something, I'm going to blurt it out, anger it out, and going to suppress you. You treat me like this, I'm going to do this, revenge. All those things are part of the sansar. This will stay there. It is the tendency of your ego that it has acquired for all these times. But as you keep going deep within, this peace starts coming in. You cannot explain, and you don't have to theoretically look for peace either, or analyze it either. But the inner peace that starts coming in starts changing the thoughts of your mind. And then little by little, ultimately, ego comes to the point that it has literally gone in the wrong direction. There is absolutely no future in sansar. There is no gain. All the time I was running after it, all these gains that I did, once I gained, I don't even care about it. It's like Buddha, once he was traveling, he saw some kids running on playing on a beach, and they were making sandcastles. And everyone had made their own sandcastles, some bigger, some smaller, and they were fighting with each other if somebody stepped on it or destroyed. And some of them were intentionally trying to destroy, the kids. So all these things were happening, fights were breaking up, and Buddha was just watching. All of a sudden, mom called, "Come on, kids, time to go home." And you know what they did? All of them jumped on their own sandcastles and broke them. The same sandcastle, they were fighting with someone else because they had damaged it. Now they themselves were damaging it. So Buddha made this main principle of his sermons. He says, whatever we are making, collecting, gathering, acquiring, holding in the sansar is like a sandcastle, has no value. At the end of your life, you're going to break it apart anyway. So all this deep thinking, philosophical insight starts coming from within. You're not doing anything about it. It starts arising only with repetitive and regular practice of meditation. It starts happening. So what happens next? So you understand the futility. There is no gain. There is no loss. What did you lose? You lost $1 million. So what? You came with nothing. Meanwhile, you had $2 million and you lost $1 million. Big deal. It was never yours anyway. So you came with nothing, you're leaving with nothing. So in reality, there is no gain, because gain in the long run is going to be lost anyway. And the same thing, whatever is your loss was never yours to begin with. So you can say that, okay, this moon is mine. And then they say, okay, I'm getting rid of the moon. It was never yours. So all these possessions that you acquire in samsara, so deep philosophical understanding starts happening that there are no gains and there are no losses. Then what am I running after? So little by little, the ego starts thinning out. And ultimately, it comes to the point that it realizes that all these projections that I had done about the future, about the people, about the situations, they all were stressing me out, all this suffering. And meanwhile, consciousness, which creates the future for everyone, is doing what it's doing anyway. No matter how much you prayed, if the rain is going to come, it's going to come. Prayers or no prayers, doesn't matter. So today, I had 3 days back, actually, I just remembered, I had a conversation with my dentist. So I had one of the molar was hurting. So I called him. And he says, okay, he's going away. He says, doesn't sound serious. So come back. When he comes back, we'll make an appointment. And, if it gets bad, take the antibiotics and all that. But it wasn't so bad. So I didn't take the antibiotics. 48 hours, the pain went away. So I texted him. He says, the pain is gone. Is it possible? Because he was talking about that, okay, we might have to do root canal, this and that. He had not seen me, of course. But so I said, is it possible? He says, yeah, maybe it was just the gum related and maybe you didn't realize, and maybe it was not a root canal. Or maybe because you just talked to the dentist, just talking to the dentist. So we were laughing about it. I said, my dental history is not the best. Every time I had a lot of issue with root canals and this and that and all that. I wish every time I talk to you, it would go away, but it didn't, right? So we can't go by that. So bottom line is, all this wish thinking doesn't always work. So sansar is futile. Mind keeps on thinking and literally getting dragged into stress and suffering, not really bringing any kind of desirable things. So consciousness, which creates the future, it creates regardless. So the best approach is the acceptance. But it does not happen because ego does not want to accept it. And that's why it keeps on fighting. But as you keep on going deeper and deeper into meditation, you start realizing ego has no value. And then starts coming to the point when your thoughts are settling down and the consciousness starts surfacing. It starts becoming real because you realize that there is a witness, there is an observer, and the thoughts being observed, which are hardly few left now. And at some point, everything becomes thoughtless. Then you are ultimately ending up with this infinite consciousness, and from which all these moments are arising. The consciousness is that life itself, the life that never turns into death. That is life that turns into death, that we call life, which is a temporary manifestation versus being unmanifest. Spirituality says there is no beginning, there is no end. There is manifestation and unmanifestation. So when you are born, you are just becoming manifest. After the death, you become unmanifest. So The life that we call life, that generates and handles all this process, it's the life-giving life and death-taking life. So ultimately, life itself is never destroyed because it is life. Life can never turn into death. So you come face to face and you realize how tiny your ego was. That's when you submit yourself and you merge into this mystical, elegant, and totally indescribable experience. That's something that is there. Even the last bit of information or your belief was that asmita, I amness, even the I amness drops. And you become one with the consciousness. At that point, the mind has receded so much because mind was holding on to past, was also holding on to the future, which it had imagined. And all these things were happening. Mind was a chaos running between past to the future, past to the future, continuously thinking. And now you suddenly end up with this vast field of consciousness, which is, there is nothing there, but it does exist. You exist. You become the existence. And that's when the spiritual faith comes in. And when the spiritual faith happens, all this thinking activity becomes redundant. Think for what? Because if you really think about it, we exist, but we existed after several billion years of history of the earth. And the solar system that we are living on right now, this is the third solar system, according to the scientists. So there were two more solar systems before, where the sun was born, lived for billions of years, and died, collapsed, bringing the whole solar system down. And another solar system came, and this is the third solar system, according to the science. So all these things have happened, and we have no idea. This is all arose from this field of silence. So past and the future are all located at the mind level, but going beyond the mind means the time stops. And only enigmatic, mysterious field remains. And asmita, the I amness, also disappears. Only the pure existence remains, from which not just our solar system, not 2 or 3 solar systems, even the whole universe might have come, not might have. We know for sure. Infinite times. And Krishna says, I am the owner of crores of universes. All these universes are being born and dying into this vast, complex matrix of the consciousness, nothing but consciousness. So when this vastness is experienced, the ego disappears. And then you realize what is at play here. Imagine coming all these rocks and minerals, and they were just random, being banging against each other, and asteroids hitting in, planets hitting each other, suns moving in, galaxies merging with each other. And somewhere along the line, the spark of life comes. Man wasn't there. No animal was even there. Only the first DNA was created out of organic soup. Who knows where it came from? Maybe it didn't even come from this earth. Maybe it came from comets, brought it, whatever. But the maker or of this manifested life must be so vast and beyond our imagination. So what do? You submit yourself. And that's what Arjun does. When he sees the Virat Swarup of Krishna, and mind well, this is where the qualitative difference comes between the Sansaric faith and a spiritual faith. In Sansar, we look for what we like. If you like money, You will be looking for money. You'll be praying for money or reputation or fame or a girlfriend or whatever. But that's all in that shell, which is ignorance. The ultimate knowledge is the consciousness. So what happens is, in sansar, if our expectation does not turn out to be, the doctor turns out to be lousy, or you end up in an accident, you lose faith in the legal system or traffic system, you lose in the faith of that friend who told you, or Netflix movies that you told me that movie was so good, I wasted my 3 hours. Things like that, right? So faith comes and goes based on your choices, whether you like it or not, but it's all sansaric. And as we know now at the samadhi state level, those things don't mean anything. But when your faith gets established in this vast matrix of consciousness, whatever happens in your life is fine. Because the same chaos which was there, nobody would have liked it. Millions of earthquakes and a lot of interplanetary movements and intergalactic movements, all those things happened. The atmosphere at that time would be so much, billions of times more fierce than what we see earthquake and volcano eruption here. Nothing. So all those things it took finally creating the life. That is called chaos to creation. And that's how much power is in the hands of this consciousness. Again, it's mystical. There is no way to figure it out. So at that point, what do? We offer ourselves. We devote 100%. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Whatever God you believe, it doesn't matter. It's just the terminology we use, that I offer myself 100%. Whatever you do is fine. And what is the result? Result is no stress, no suffering, no thinking necessary. I am not taking control of my life anymore. Give it to him. But the joy that comes out of it, the pleasure, the sensation of total rest, contentment that comes is amazing, because something you never had experienced. But the qualitative difference in sansar, the faith was only to achieve what you liked. So only pleasurable things were acceptable in sansar. Painful things were not acceptable in sansar. But in the spiritual faith, when you put your faith in the highest authority of all, everything is acceptable. Sukh and dukh is acceptable. It requires very deep spiritual vision to understand all these things. You talk the same talk to a sansari, he's not going to get it. He says, how come some suffering is good for me? Because he has not developed that depth. But at that depth level, actually, suffering is more effective in raising your spiritual elevation, spiritual uplifting. Friends are deterrent on your spiritual path because they give you happiness. But enemies are better on the spiritual path because they make you realize the true nature of sansar. So in spiritual path, everything changes. Everything is opposite. Whatever was good was there, becomes bad. Whatever bad was there, becomes good. Basically, it's not good or bad anymore. The definition of good or bad changes. Only one thing remains, the faith. The faith in this highest consciousness that it can never do anything wrong. And then you still live your normal life, but whenever things happen, you accept it. Acceptance because it's coming from the divine. So this is what faith is about. And so much for today. And we'll talk later.